Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the Lessons into Blessings podcast, right? Because for me, every lesson, there's something to be pulled from it. Every failure, every mistake, if you're really paying attention to it, there's something to pull from it. There's a lesson to be learned from it. As an investor, you have to be nimble. You have to be flexible. You have to be adaptable. There are going to be lifing, right? So life is always happening. There's things that you're going to plan out for a real estate deal and it's going to come up. To me, I want to see when I'm working with someone, how are they working through these issues, right? Like how are they able to overcome some of the challenges that come up? If they just get hit and just fall out and they're not getting back up, they're not getting in solution space, they're not trying to figure out, what they can do, then it's probably not someone that I want to work with because I know adversity is going to come up. I know challenges are going to come up. How are you going to handle it? Well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. I'm your host, Tari Thomas, and today I'm actually doing something a little bit differently. I'm actually going to do an episode where I bring a friend on and they are going to interview me. And so one thing that I learned about just having a conversation with Rachel Jimenez, who I'm going to bring on, she is a blog writer for Money Hacking Mama, teaching women on how to generate passive income streams. I met her at FinCon recently this year. And, while we were on the plane and just talking about just different things about life, I realized I haven't actually told my story on the show. And so I wanted to bring her on because I thought she asked really thoughtful questions and to help her to just pull out my story and share that a little bit with you. So if you could help me welcome onto the show, Rachel Jimenez.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And for your audience to know, we were on a flight and I noticed that she had the FinCon wristband on and we spent like 3 or 4 hours the entire flight talking.
Right.
It go by so fast, but that's how much story I know is inside Tari.
Right.
I'm so excited to help pull that out because I can't believe that everybody listening doesn't know her story and there's so much wisdom there.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the conversation. It was just natural how we met and just all that we learned. So yeah, just talking through that whole ride, it was like, whoa, so many ahas and nuggets that I just got from you as well. And so I'm really looking forward to today. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. So let's just jump right into it. You have a crazy, inspiring, amazing background. Can you tell me as much of your story as you can get? How did you get where you are today?
Wow, that's a big question.
I know.
It's a big question. So I give the short version of, just and where I'm at today in real estate was what I'm assuming, or just in life in general.
I want to know in life in general because I think it all relates.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, on the East Coast, in the Bronx, and then my mom moved us away from where most of my family hub was to the state of Delaware, and we kind of, grew up. I'm a first generation American, so my mom is kind of a, drill us, do a million different things, make sure we did all the things that she did not have the opportunity to do. So we were thrown into a million different sports and, all sorts of activities. And it's funny because everything she threw me into, I stopped. The only thing I really loved to do was basketball and probably hustling. So early on, I joined this fair where I had to be, we had to come up with some sort of idea. And this was like 4th grade. And I came up with selling pixie sticks. I don't even know if you remember that, those little sticks where you fill it up with sugar.
Pure sugar. Yep.
And so I ended up selling that in the mini fair. I won the mini fair and I was like, oh, here's a way to make money. And so from 4th grade, probably to like all the way through junior high school, I was like the candy lady. And my dad, being that he's from New York, he would travel back and forth between New York and Delaware. He was my supplier. And so he would bring the latest and greatest, from New York. So I kind of always had that entrepreneurial kind of bug in me since I was a kid. My cousins, and if you talk to any of my family, they would say, you know, Tari was always trying to figure out a way to make money. But my mom, she really put me on like an engineering track really early on in my life. So from like junior high to high school, all throughout, I would do every Saturday an engineering program. Every summer, I'd go to University of Delaware and we would do an engineering. So I was kind of on the engineering track. I was good in science and math. And so when I went to college, I went to Michigan, and that was kind of, you know, put me on the engineering track. And that brought me to the Arizona, where is where I reside today, but got recruited out here for engineering job and spent really like 16 years in engineering, engineering program management. But when I first moved here to Arizona, it was such a young city at the time, still really getting built out. I stumbled on real estate, and I did that a couple years out of college. And I didn't have
stumble onto real estate.
Stumbled. I did. I kind of stumbled a little bit.
Trip over a real estate loan?
A little bit. You know, I just knew, okay, you know, real estate seems to be a thing out here. I'm paying rent and I don't want to pay rent anymore. It just goes to nowhere. I might as well be paying a mortgage, right? And so didn't know what that took. You know, my credit was, I didn't have bad credit, but I didn't have any credit. And so my credit score was pretty low.
And was this in college, or this is after you were in
This
industry?
was 2 years after college.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And so I made a decent salary at Intel. So, you know, definitely prices of homes were like hundreds, 200s, you know, when I was buying a house in Arizona. And so it was like, why not? Like this, you know, and so really for me, the catch was getting qualified, getting someone to accept an application. I drove my realtor crazy because I probably looked at 100+ homes.
What year was this?
This was 2002.
2002. Okay, so what was the market like back then? Because I know like 2008 it was
running. Arizona is a very high appreciation, fast moving market. It's one of the markets that got crushed when the housing downturn happened. And yeah, it's been so that at the time certain cities were already running up in price, and so I was getting priced out of areas and cities that were closer to where I worked. And so my realtor was finally like, you know what, let's go way out here, Timbuktu. Laveen is a city that it's called. It's really Phoenix, but it's like a little suburb of Phoenix. And yeah, this city's growing. It's, you know, it's new development. It was about 25 minutes at the time from where I worked.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I like this city. No one's really kind of, you know, my friends were like, why are you moving way out in Timbuktu? Like, it's so far away. But for me, it was, you know, I just looked at it as, okay, this is an investment. This is something I get to own.
Right. And was it new property? A new build?
It was, yeah, brand new build properties. And Arizona is a really new build kind of state. So, I mean, you go to East Coast where I'm from, you know, 70s is young, right? You know, homes go way back, right? Here, 70s is like, what? Like, we didn't, you know, so it's very easy to have a 90s build home or 2000 or 80s, right? Like it's, you know, this is still a very young city. So yeah, so I ended up buying my first house on an FHA loan. And
how much did you put down?
3% down, nothing.
Okay.
The house
cost interest rate?
$30,000. So I put like maybe $3,500 down as a deposit. I mean, as a down payment. And I came in, so I purchased it for 130, and it was worth 140. So I was like, whoa, I already have 10K in equity. You know,
so
right
how did that happen?
Just because property valuations were moving so fast. Within 2 years, that house that was 130 was like 270 plus.
Wow. Do you remember your interest rate at the time?
Like it is now, 7-8%.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's funny because, you know, when the interest rates dropped to 3%, 4%, it was kind of crazy. I was like, oh, it's not going to last. This is
Mm-hmm.
nuts. Like, it's so low, right? Because I
Right.
remember the days of when it was like 7, 8%. So when it dropped to 3, there was a couple decisions I made, like to sell properties, because I was like, oh, there's no way it's going to keep, it's going to stay down this low,
Mm-hmm.
So who knew it would have lasted as long as it did? We rode that train. So
Right, right.
I don't know if the interest rates will drop as low as people think again. I definitely think it's gonna be higher than what I guess the last decade has been used to. I think
Mm-hmm.
we'll probably normalize somewhere around 5 or 6%, but we'll
Mm-hmm.
see. No, it's anybody's guess. So
Yep. I wish we had a crystal ball, right?
I really do.
Only time will tell. Okay,
Yeah.
so your first house, you stumbled into it, and then what
Yeah.
happened?
And then after that, it was just like, whoa, this is a thing, and I saw, oh, once I did it, I was like, okay, let me build up my credit. Got a secured credit card, one of those, you pay $50 and it's like a $50 credit card, and
Mm-hmm.
just slowly started building it up. And it just, my credit limit kept increasing, and I kept increasing my credit scores, because my goal was every 2 years, I want to buy another house. Every 2 years, I want to buy another house. And my strategy at the time was to, you avoid capital gains taxes if you live in it 2 years, sell it within
Mm-hmm.
5 of living in it. And so that was my strategy. Buy as a personal residence, move every 2 years, hold rent out the one you used to live in, hold it for 5 years, and then sell it, right? And
Got
take
it.
that equity and move on. And so every
Mm-hmm.
2 years I'd move, and I stayed in Levine. So my first strategy was move every 2, stay in Levine. And in the city that I was in, just buying new builds. So
Mm-hmm.
really early on, my strategy was just new builds. I don't have to worry about fixing up or repairing anything. And I think for people, if they can find a city that's growing, and there's all these incentives that builders were doing at the time, and I think we're coming back to that space where now builders are like, okay, we need to get this stuff off the streets. They're offering some really good incentives to get people into houses. So if that's your way of doing it, then I say, yeah, go for that strategy. But then after that, I started investing out of state. It was a friend of mine that got me investing out of state to do a couple flips. Because of the downturn in the market, I had to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an out-of-state landlord for probably like 7+ years. And that was its own feat.
Mm-hmm.
Investing in the state of Louisiana, which wasn't appreciation rich market like Arizona. It was more of a cash flow market. So
Mm-hmm.
cash flowed really well because of, you bought the homes cheap, but the rents were high. I really never really understood, like, okay, you should just buy this house and pay the mortgage. So was able to really get that experience of just what it's like investing out of state. And then
Mm-hmm.
every year, it's just, I wanted to keep stepping up my game. And so after the downturn in the market, I took a little bit of a break, and then I started getting back into it by buying just small condos. And my goal there was, hey, if I can take the equity out of these condos and pour that into multifamily, that was my goal all along.
Mm-hmm.
And
And let
so,
me let me go back a little bit, because you
yeah.
mentioned the 2-year strategy. So I'm curious, how did you have a mentor? Did you do research online? Do you have family that's in real estate? Like, how did you learn real estate? How did you develop this every 2-year strategy?
Yeah,
And
no, that's
also, how
good.
did you have the courage to move forward? Because I think there's knowing what to do is one piece of the game, but then
Yeah.
also having the courage to actually take action. And so I'm curious
No, that's
about
really,
both
really
of those
good.
parts.
I didn't have anyone in real estate. My mom is kind of like, she'd invested. So, I mean, she paid off our childhood home. And so she was really
Mm-hmm.
big in land more so. So she kind of inspired me to kind of go get pieces of land and start buying land and looking at land and things like that. But she's a banker by trade. So
Mm-hmm.
she kind of always told me to invest, right?
Right.
And so, when I joined the company that I joined, she was like, get the stock, like
Yeah.
stack up. It's a great company. They split, and So she would tell me stuff like that, but nobody really told me the ins and outs of real estate, how to do it. I kind of learned, there was a lot of, at the time, there wasn't as much YouTube strategy.
Right.
It was reading books. There was a lot of no money down programs, when I was, learning. So I would like listen to the programs. If I couldn't afford it, I'd send it back. I would read stories and things like that, just of how people were doing it. And so I bought into a couple programs early on and just started learning. And I learned that, I don't even know where I learned the capital gains thing, but it was a tip I learned early on. And once I kind of see a system to something, I think, I definitely have a knack for learning a system and then just cranking the crank, and just, oh, okay, this is a thing. I should just keep doing this and milking this as much as I can. Right.
And did you invest? You mentioned your mom's a banker and you had stock options. Did you do traditional investing, like in a 401k or an IRA or anything, or you were all in on real estate?
No, I did. I always maxed out my 401k at work. But as for me, because when I bought the first house, I immediately got a roommate. So my first roommate was a guy, he was an intern that was working at my company. And so he stayed in my house for the summer. I mean, literally, as soon as I bought the house, I had
house packing.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And so I didn't even realize, it wasn't even house hacking at the time. I was just like, hey, this is a big house. It was 2,000 square feet, 3 beds with a loft and me. So I was like, yeah, I should get someone to help me with this because there's no reason, I'm a simple person. So it's like, I should get someone to fill this space. So he moved out. I had another person that, recommended a friend, and she lived with me for like 2+ years. Then when I moved, she moved into that space, and then I would just get different people, and I just literally stockpiled cash. And I probably was saving a good 20-25% of my income at the time, and just using that
and
for
just
the
holding
next
in cash until you could get for the next house.
Absolutely.
So you had a goal in mind and you were very strategic. And was it the rents then from your tenants that were living with you that you were cash piling?
Yeah, well, the rents were paying the mortgage, right? So the rents were definitely helping to pay the mortgage, not enough for all the expenses and things like that. And then, it was just me saving, and I'm in general a saver. Been a saver since I was a kid. So I was just saving, just living way below my means, and just stockpiling it and just rolling it into the next one and just rolling it into the next one.
I think I just want to highlight how important this was. What was your job title at the time?
What was my job title at the time? I was an analyst. So like a business analyst.
And do you share how much you made at that time?
Yeah, I made about 50 grand, 50, maybe a little over 50 to 60. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 50 to 60,000, a professional woman. I think it's interesting because I know I'm a millennial. So a lot of people will say like, oh, these millennials, they're entitled and things like that. And so I just want to point out, whatever your beliefs are, the fact that sometimes you have to make sacrifices, right? And so like the fact that you were an engineer, you have a great background, you're a professional working woman with an analyst job title, making good money. You probably could have afforded to live up in that house on your own, but you chose, because you had bigger financial goals, to have a roommate, right? To be humble in that fact, save your money. Because I think some people will be like, oh no, like I don't want a roommate. I don't want it. Like I want to live alone. I deserve this. I earned this, which you did. And you did deserve whatever you want, right? Whatever you can afford. But whether or not that gets you to your next goal or not. And so you said that you were a saver. So I think it's just important to highlight that there are sacrifices that are made.
No, that's good. And I feel like that has been somewhat of Dave Ramsey always says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else, which essentially make the sacrifices now. So in the way you live, so that you can really live the way you want to live in the future. And it's not like I knew that term at the time, but I feel like, and it was probably just a part of who I was, always, once again, thinking about strategies to make money and things like that. And I was like, whoa, this is possible with real estate. And I just kind of, started doing that. It wasn't until I had I was in the process of buying another property, and I was transitioning one of the houses that I owned. I moved back in it temporarily before I moved into this next property, and I was assaulted in my home.
Oh,
And someone held me at gunpoint, you know.
Was it
and
like a robbery?
Yeah.
And yeah, wow.
Yep. So two men, one with a shotgun. And that incident really transformed the way I thought. So I immediately had to move out of that space. I ended up that year, it was right before the downturn of the real estate market. And I'd gotten laid off at Intel. So they downsized some jobs, and I could have stayed, but I was like, no, I really want to take this next step in real estate and continue to fuel stuff. And it wasn't until then, it was a crazy year. Like, I call it the worst year of my life and the best year of my life, because I learned a lot of things about me, just kind of stepping out into kind of this new real estate entrepreneurship. And so this is my second round, right? My second round of doing this, you know, full time. And the first time it was just like, fail, you know, like just, I mean, everything that could have happened to me. I totaled my car. You know, the incident happened in my home where I got assaulted. I had to live with someone for 2 years. I mean, just being comfortable again, living on my own, not wanting to spend too much because, you know, I was, you know, just starting back out and saying, hey, yeah, I want to do this real estate thing. But I learned, I thank God for that year, because as crazy as it was, probably cried every day. But as crazy as it was, I learned so much about myself, my resiliency in that year. Just how my faith level went to another level. I realized how much God truly had me. Like, the biggest real estate mistake that I made in my life was investing in Costa Rica, not because Costa Rica wasn't a great market. It's just, I didn't know enough. And I was so eager and so hungry to make the deal work that I was just bypassing red flags. And
what kind of red flags were there?
Red flags of like, okay, you don't know all the rules and the laws of Costa Rica. The person that you're kind of like, you don't understand the language of this document that you're signing, you know, just, you know, it was really going based on trust of the person that, you know, I was partnered with. And not even the person that I was partnered with, but the person that he trusted. So I was trusting someone from another individual, and I hadn't done my due diligence, and that wasn't even my style. But I was so hungry to make something happen. And I think that's sometimes the issues that people who really are hungry, I just want to do real estate. It's like, yeah, that's great. But it's great to just want to do it. But just because you own it doesn't mean you're making money, right? And
this is so true.
You know, some people just want to get in so bad that they're just like, oh, I don't care. Oh, no. But are you doing the right due diligence to make sure that all the numbers make sense, that this is going to make sense for you in the long run, that you did especially if you're partnering with someone, or you know, did you do your due diligence on those individuals to make sure that, you know, they were legit? And so all of, you know, 50 grand later, liquid cash, you know, all the money I saved, stockpiling for roommates and all that stuff, gone, right? And you know, I had the opportunity to flip out of some of those deals. I could have still moved forward and taken down the properties and flipped it to investors in America who were already lined up and looking for it. I just, with the individual that I was getting, you know, that was pretty much selling these pieces and parcels of real estate, I just had to take the L. I was just like, I can't put that on somebody else. I don't want it on me. I can't put it on somebody else. So I just took the L. And it was a very painful lesson because it left me pretty dry. I also gambled it all, right? And so, but great learning lesson. Like I said, that whole year and just that real estate experience. I do my due diligence now. I know, you know, I had discernment then. I just didn't listen to it. And just being carried through that year, I watched that, you know, God kept me through that whole process. And I ended up rejoining my company, you know, a year and 3 months later. And but going in with a new purpose of what I wanted to achieve, and knowing more about what I brought to the table.
Right, right. And what advice would you give to somebody that, I think there's a couple things. So your worst year of your life, what advice would you give to someone? And then that failure that you had with Costa Rica, what advice would you give to someone either when they're going through something like that or to potentially help them avoid it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the Lessons into Blessings podcast, right? Because for me, every lesson, there's something to be pulled from it. Every failure, every mistake, if you're really paying attention to it, there's something to pull from it. There's a lesson to be learned from it. As an investor, you have to be nimble. You have to be flexible. You have to be adaptable. There are going to be be lifing, right? So life is always happening. There's things that you're going to plan out for a real estate deal, and it's going to come up. To me, I want to see, when I'm working with someone, how are they working through these issues, right? Like, how are they able to overcome some of the challenges that come up? If they just get hit and just fall out and they're not getting back up, they're not getting in solution space, they're not trying to figure out, what they can do, then it's probably not someone that I want to work with, because I know adversity is going to come up. I know challenges are going to come up. How are you going to handle it? And so I would say I was able to pull a lot from the experience that I went through and the year that I went through. And now, I was able to rebound and make so much more as a result, right? Especially also when you lose that amount of money, some people can see it as, hey, well, I now know what it feels like to lose that amount of money, and know that, hey, I can bounce back from it, right? And so, what used to be like $50 was like, oh my God, I don't want to lose $50. Then it became $500. I don't want to. And so my threshold of what I could lose and wanted to lose, and I had a different level and threshold of risk, and it just made me stronger as an individual, and what I could glean from it. From the real estate deal is just, once again, just like knowing who you're getting in bed with, right? Like when people are a little bit too anxious to take your money, and you should do due diligence. There's public record. If people have a record, it's public, and you can find it. And the funny thing is, I found out about him after the fact, because I was like, okay, once I started investigating, okay, what are things I can do to kind of maybe get myself out of this? Then, I talked to some legal teams, and they knew his name. He was in similar spaces with other people. And so it was like, man, and so now I don't need to rush anything. If I don't have a good sense or feeling about something, it's like, okay, let's pause on this. Let me take my time with it, because there will always be deals. Another thing that people's worst mistake is falling in love with a deal. People fall in love with deals. It's easy to do. Like, if you, I love this piece of real estate. Oh, I love the way, you got to be able to negotiate effectively. You've got to be willing to walk away. And so I never try to get so in love with something that I'm not willing to walk away.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are two really good lessons, just patience. And I think you've shown patience and humility really in your whole journey, which is important. And you mentioned strength and threshold, but I think threshold for pain. I study people that are successful. And I love to read autobiographies and biographies and things like that. But and some of them are athletes, some of them are entrepreneurs, but I feel like the most successful people have a high tolerance and threshold for pain and adversity, because it is hard. Business is hard, life is hard. And so if you give up when things get challenging, you're never going to get to that next level. But I have a background in positive psychology.
Okay, why am I feeling this way? Where am I at? Where's my headspace at? And really try to shift and pivot from that. And I'm really gracious for all of the things that I've been through, because it has helped me to really be able to navigate adversity waters much, much better.
Right. No, I love that. Like, just having a growth mindset. I think a lot of people have more of a scarcity mindset, a fixed mindset. And when things get hard, they have this inner mindset and dialogue of like, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. Therefore, I will give up. But that's the worst that you can do, because the only way to fail is really to just stop trying, right? Because like you said, you constantly learn. And so as long as you're not making the same mistake twice, you're going to learn, and you're that much better than the person that's younger than you, or the person
Absolutely.
that started after you, because you just have wisdom.
Yeah.
And those, you've paid for those lessons, right? You've paid for
Yes,
them
I
either
have.
financially or with pain, but you've earned them, and then you get the benefit of taking them on into your future and to the rest of your life, and then they pay off in the long run.
Yeah, that's
Usually.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. And that's why my favorite quote is, I never fail. I either win or I learn. And I truly believe that with everything that's within me. Anytime I'm going through any struggle or something's coming at me, I always level set. Okay, why am I feeling this way? Where am I at? Where's my headspace at? And really try to shift and pivot from that. And I'm really gracious for all of the things that I've been through, because it has helped me to really be able to navigate adversity waters much, much better.
Created an amazing company, There's Room LLC. So can you tell me more about that company and how you got from the beginner investor that was, moving every 2 years, made the mistake in Costa Rica, and then created There's Room?
Yeah. So There's Room actually came out of my sister's story. She, her husband passed away. He was the breadwinner, and she needed a space. She lived on the East Coast. I lived in Arizona, and she was pretty much like, Tari, I got two options. I'm either moving back in with mom, and my mom lives in Florida, or coming across the country. And I could hear in her voice, I was actually in the process of moving again to possibly California to do some startup work. And I just heard it in her voice that, like, okay, yeah, this is her time and she needs it. And so in the process of that, in the process of her shifting her life and moving her family to Arizona, I realized, hey, I have these extra space rooms, and my rooms became a safe, affordable space so she could finish her college degree. She ended up completing her nursing degree. And in the process of that, I was looking for my next real estate venture. Once again, I'm always trying to step up my game. And so I knew I wanted to get into multifamily, but I was also looking at, I do a lot of work with youth and things like that. And so I was also looking at, okay, how can I marry my passions, do stuff that is kind of, it's fulfilling my soul, and it's also fulfilling, money things too as well. Mm-hmm. And so just really, as I talk to nonprofits and talk to even just, my sister really saying, hey, there's a lot of nurses that are dropping out of school because she was kind of just in a moment of being gracious, just saying, hey man, I'm so happy that I had you to be able to lean on, because there's a lot of nurses that are dropping out of school, and because they don't have this safe, affordable space, right? And they need to be able to afford life, right? And so they can't finish up. And what I was finding is that there's a lot of goal-oriented individuals who, they are working, they are making income, but they don't make enough to afford a full rental. Mm-hmm. And they make too much to get any sort of government aid or any sort of subsidy. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, we have these people that are falling in the gap, and they don't have, the family support like my sister had with me. I just happen to be a single woman in a 3-bedroom house that, yeah, I have the space, right? And so as I started digging, it was like, wow, there's a lot of empty guest bedrooms in homes. I think it was like 1 million that I researched at the time, 1 million in Arizona. And it was like, wow, what if people just did what I did, Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of, it was just an idea. I literally was just meditating and just kind of just thinking, and it just dropped on me. Like, what if people did what I was doing with my sister and just opened up the extra guest bedrooms in their home? And that became a thing. It wasn't automatic. Like I was like, hey, I should go make a business idea of this. It was just like, here's a thought. And I just started researching it. Like, okay, well, does the government pay for bedrooms? And, I found that was not the case. I had a lot of nonprofits that I talked to and was like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, but they couldn't make it work, and these are a lot of housing nonprofits. And so I ended up, after my sister finished up her degree, she decided to move back to the East Coast. Literally, as soon as they left, I got laid off again. Once again, Intel downsizing, and I was like, wow, like I was gonna leave when she came, and now I'm Now I'm being forced to leave.
Right.
So I felt like it was divine. I felt like it was just another setup. Like, okay, it's time. It's time to go. And so I had this idea. I was researching it, trying to figure out all these angles to how to make, this, what is this? Like, how can I make this happen? But when I decided to, I got laid off, and I got about 2 months with the company before I had to move on. I ended up wanting to just go back into startups. So I was like, okay, how do I get back into the startup space? And yeah, I just stumbled into the business. I ended up entering a competition and won it. Wasn't planning on doing it. And it was like, hey, you have the time, you have the ability to do it now. So let's just do it now. So I started from zero, just a raw idea, and ended up, with over 50, 60 tenants. I think we've helped over about 200 people to find space, affordable spaces. And yeah, we just built it little by little. We started with, owners that had, affordable rooms. And then we ended up just master leasing properties and subdividing the spaces and renting them by room. So a lot of people are now coming into, I think since COVID, now coming into the shared housing space and co-living. And now it's becoming a real thing. But when I first started, it was like, what? People are going to do this? That sounds like a college model. But a lot of our tenants are anywhere from their 20s to their 60s, and just looking for an affordable space to do life and just to become and get back on their feet. So we have clients that are divorcees, and I mean, you've got clients of every financial thing that could potentially affect somebody, because maybe they're one paycheck away from, and a lot of people, right? Most Americans are one paycheck away from being homeless or being, in a bad situation. And so yeah, it was birthed out of that. And I've really enjoyed just hearing, being able to help people in all sorts of situations, everything from nurses to, secretaries to, people who work in childcare. I mean, it runs the gamut.
Yeah, I love it. I love because I think when we first met and you were telling me this, I was like, oh, is that like the not low class people necessarily, but I know they have like different classes of real estate. Is it like A, B, C, D? And I was like, oh, that kind of scares me. Is that the lower end? And you mentioned that, like, no, like there's hardworking people that are good people that have good credit scores. But yeah, you get divorced, and if the man moves out and the wife still has the house, he's potentially, if he's the breadwinner, maybe he's paying a mortgage, and then he also has to pay rent, and his kids are living there, so he can't afford to, live in luxury himself, but he still has to have a roof over his head or something like that. Absolutely. And so that really was eye-opening to me. And I love that in a way, like you leveraged your story and the story of your sister, and that reality that you knew that she was a hardworking woman and, just had some bad luck, I guess.
Absolutely.
And so there's people out there.
And now she's doing phenomenally. I love it, because it's like full circle. She just bought her house, and she got remarried, and it's just like, wow, like, when you're, and it's back to lessons and blessings, because she was in the midst of such a crazy experience of, she had to move out of her home that she built her home with her family, and just to see like her hard work and determination, and just being able to really have space to do what she needed to do to climb back. Like, now she's right back where she needs to be, right? She's able to make an income and provide for her family. She makes 6 figures now as a nurse. And, was able to buy another property again. And to me, it's like, wow, you know what I mean? And that's what we want for all of our renters, is to be able to not, live out of a room forever, right? Like, it's all to achieve some sort of goal. Some people bought their own home. Some people moved into a full rental because they were able to make that shift. Some people started businesses. Some people, finished up their schoolwork. So, I mean, there's a million stories, of million different tenants. I wish tenants were more open to really talk about those stories, because, I mean, if people really understood like what their home could provide for someone else, and you make money at the same time. So it's a win-win, right? On both sides of the fence. So
yeah, I love that. Well, I know we're getting low on time, but I think this is I want to ask you one more question. So you witnessed it with your sister, watching her bounce back. You've seen a lot of tenants bounce back. you've had some amazing experiences in your life, both good and bad. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that you mentioned that there was some assault in your background. But for people that maybe have experienced something like that or are currently experiencing it, what are some final tips that you could give them to help them get over when they're in the middle, right? They're on kind of that downward slope, and they may or may not have hope. And we've seen it with your story and your sister's story that there is hope and you can come back. But any tips or advice or words of encouragement for people that are going through that now?
Yeah, I would say with any sort of, I rely heavily on my faith. So I will say that I am a Christian, and I don't use that term really, like a lot of people use that term really loosely, but I really do. It is a rock, and it is something that I stand on. I always know that it's going to get better no matter what the situation is. A lot of times I used to be in a space where I would say, why me? Like, why me, Lord? And I'm saying, like, why not me? Right? Like, everyone goes through struggle. Everyone goes through hardship. Some of the most successful people I think you've talked to, like some people that you've seen and been able to attain, is they've experienced some crazy hardships, and it's like, it's going to get better at the end. You can't really see the future, and it's hard to like trust and hope that things will get better, especially when you're getting through it. I think having people there to as people to lean on is important. I had a lot of people that didn't always know what I was going through, but there were critical people that did, and that were there as support to kind of just, help me get along. I had a lot of people who just help support me in those specific times. So I would say, don't isolate yourself, because that's the worst thing that you could do. Just making sure that you have people to help you be accountable, and that are honest with you, that can take you out of your stuff if you need to, and shine a mirror up to you to show you how excellent and awesome that you are. Because I think when people can spiral into thinking, oh God, it'll never get better. And there's so much that is in us that we don't understand is in us until we go through the thing. We don't know what's in us when things are good.
Right.
It's just not the case. We realize what's in us when times get when we get tested, right? And so we either, we could fail the test, but eventually you're going to have to keep taking the test to get over it, right? Whatever it is that you put to the side and you decide not to deal with now will come back up, and you will have to deal with it again. So if it's anger issues, if it's things that past issues or trauma that you've dealt with in your past, you're going to have to come up and deal with it again, because it's going to continue to be a roadblock in your life. And I just learned that until you deal with stuff like that, you really can't be free. We're all trying to be financially free, but there are a lot of things that stop us from being financially free because we haven't overcome certain hurdles of trauma in our life. And so I think once you are able to really jump over some of those hurdles, you realize how it unlocks different parts of your life, right? So that being free from certain traumas is going to unlock the financial freedom. It's going to unlock the time freedom. It's going to unlock a lot of the different things in your life. And just being able to take a step of trust on you and what's in you, and knowing that there's so much in you that you don't even realize until you start digging and exploring. So, I guess that would be my advice. I kind of rambled on there a bit, but
no, I think that's amazing. Like, keep going. Don't give up hope. And I love that you mentioned to not isolate yourself. Like I said, I study positive psychology. Harvard they have this study of happiness that's basically, I think it's almost up to 100 years, so like multiple generations of people.
Wow.
And basically the number one tip is surround yourself with people. Because at the end of the day, people don't wish that on their deathbed that they had more money, because you can't take it with you. But they wish that they spent more time in their relationship.
Absolutely.
And relationships, that's how we get through things, right? When we're hurting, you sometimes you want to isolate yourself, but go reach out to friends. Like, they can help you find a different perspective, or give you advice, or give you a hug, right?
Exactly.
It can be as simple as that sometimes, but people can definitely help.
Relationships are so critical. I mean,
absolutely.
Especially as an engineer, people think with ones and zeros, we're technical. A lot of people think technical folks are not relationship folks, but relationships are extremely critical in every area of life, business, I mean, I think a lot of people think they rely so much on themselves and rely on their intelligence or rely on their physical strength or rely on their, and it's like, we all have weaknesses, and being able to fill in the blank, you know, with your weakness, with the right people in your lives is essentially critical to achieve any level of success, period. Like, there's no way you're doing it all on your own. Anybody who says they do it all on their own, maybe if they've achieved a certain level of success on their own, I'm saying, wow, what could you achieve with other people? Like, you could be doing so much more, right? So
that's a great point. Well, I think this is an amazing point to wrap. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope your listeners found value.
And I'm sure they're going to have more questions. What I do to other people.
Yeah, my pleasure. You're welcome.
Oh, man. And tell people how they could reach out to you. I know I'd mentioned a little bit about what you do. I always give people a moment to just, you know, tell about what you do. And I think you're doing some awesome things and helping women to get passive streams of income. So real quick, just give a quick blurb.
Yeah, I think so. Money Hacking Mama is where I blog. You can go to moneyhackingmama.com. I think the best way to stay in touch with me, you can read the blog articles there, but I send out a weekly newsletter that has tips on success and productivity and passive income. And it's based in research on positive psychology and things like that. So definitely check that out. I have a lot of people say that it's the one newsletter that they actually read every week, and it's one of the favorite things that lands in their inbox.
Oh, that's awesome. I love
it. Check that out. And I love to hear from you. And please respond to me, because I am a real person that writes it, and I would love to have a conversation.
Exactly, which is hard to find these days.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode of Lessons into Blessings. Until next time, stay blessed.